A day has passed. Inigo was in his room in Amber Hearth, preparing for the day. Then there was a knock. Inigo, this is Lyra. Are you ready? Inigo snapped his head towards the door and sighed. She's already here early. I'm coming out. Inigo stepped towards the door and opened it, and he may not have noticed it, but Lyra really had such beautiful features for an elf. She's thin but not too thin, and her silver hair was so lustrous that it seemed sparkling against the sunlight that was streaming through the windows of the hallway. And as for her clothes, she was wearing a simple tunic that is made to blend among the citizens of the city. You ready? He asked. Lyra gave a curt nod. I've written down names. People I know from my days freelancing. Black market agents, legitimate mages, alchemists. We don't go to the guild for this. Obviously. They loaded a plain cart they had rented the night before, covering everything in linen and canvas. To the average passerby, they looked like traveling textile merchants or exotic hunters selling pelts, not smugglers of monster-grade material worth thousands of gold. Their first stop was a nondescript building nestled in the old quarter of Elandra, a former tannery that now served as a private buyer's den. An elderly man with white whiskers and a monocle met them at the gated courtyard. He examined the bundle of hide Lyra presented, running gloved fingers over its shimmering scales. Spell resistance is embedded throughout the fibers, he muttered. And these patterns are naturally occurring mana veins. Remarkable. He looked up, breath-catching. This isn't just any wyvern, is it? Inigo smiled, offering no answer. The man paid them 230 gold for 2 full hide sheets. The second buyer, a mage named Calrem, took one look at the preserved venom gland and offered 300 gold on the spot. Apparently, elder wyvern venom was a rare component in transmutation elixirs, and highly controlled. They sold the claws to a craftsman who specialized in creating warded weapons for elite dueling circles. Each talon fetched 50 gold. There were 6 of them. By mid-afternoon, Lyra and Inigo sat at a shaded table in the upper market square, counting coin and sipping chilled cider. 1,210 gold, Lyra said, eyebrows raised. Inigo leaned back in his chair, counting mentally. And we still haven't sold the heart or the skull crest. She nodded slowly. We could buy an estate at this rate. Or fund our own private company, Inigo replied. Gear, transportation, contacts. Imagine a mobile armory. Hire mercenaries. Build networks. He gave him a look. You really think long-term about this? He shrugged. I didn't come here to be broke. They spent the rest of the day discreetly negotiating with Elisa's contacts. The heart, when finally sold to a high-ranking court alchemist from the merchant duchy of Irvelen, earned them 1,500 gold. The mage arrived under heavy guard, examined the specimen carefully and paid in stamped bullion. 1,500, Inigo whispered after the man left. Just for a heart. Lyra looked mildly impressed. That's enough for an entire adventurer squad to operate for a year. And we're just 2. They decided not to sell the jawbone, not yet. It was too conspicuous, and Inigo suggested it could serve as leverage later. By the time dusk rolled around, they'd accumulated nearly 3,000 gold in mixed coins, bars and sealed chits. Inigo carried most of it in his inventory, safer than keeping it in a room or even a vault. They walked back to the inn under the purpling sky, a quiet satisfaction between them. As they entered their suite again, Inigo tossed his coat onto the chair and sat down with a long exhale. We made really a lot of money by just selling the parts of a monster. If I must say, adventuring is truly the way towards the upper classes. As for your share, we will divide the money tomorrow. Fine by me, and it's a dangerous job, Lyra reminded. Mind you that a normal adventurer couldn't kill a wyvern that easily as they are flying in the air. Which is why typically you would need a mage or an archer or someone like you to shoot them down from the sky. And so far it has been easy for me, Inigo grinned. Can't blame you for thinking that way since you haven't fought a lot of stronger monsters, Lyra said as she removed her gloves. I am aware of that. I know that day will come and life will humble me. I'm just exhilarated that I am enjoying this kind of life. You know, killing stuff and earning money from it. Which is why tomorrow we will look for another job. Before that, you mentioned something about you buying a house in the capital? Oh yeah. I can put that idea on hold for now. I'm sure a house in this place would cost a fortune and I don't have the fortune yet. I know 2,000 gold coins are a lot, but the fact there are others who would pay so much for monster parts that was killed by conventional means meant that there are adventurers out there who have made even more, Inigo said, his voice trailing into thought. We're not at the top yet. We just had one lucky score. Lyra gave him a knowing look as she slipped her cloak over her shoulders. That's the first time I've heard you admit that. I'm not arrogant, he replied with a grin. Just confident. But even confidence needs coin to stand on. She turned to the door and paused, hand on the handle. Then I'll see you tomorrow? You'll have the next quest picked out by then? Inigo nodded. Before breakfast even. I've already got a few ideas. Lyra didn't move right away. She lingered at the door, eyes soft but unreadable. Then she gave a short nod. All right. Rest up, Inigo. You too, Lyra. The morning sun filtered lazily through the stained glass window of Inigo's suite at the amber hearth. He sat at the edge of the bed, shirt half buttoned. The previous night's windfalls still buzzed in his head. Nearly 3,000 gold in just one hunt. He pulled the pouch open and thumbed through the smooth edges of stamped coins and ingots. Tokens of real success. Not just survival but victory. Control. Choice. Time to see what you're really worth, he muttered. With a deep breath, Inigo opened his system interface. System accessed. Shop of Freedom. Tab. Token exchange. Real currency to system token. Current balance. 10,005 tokens. He had used this feature before and he had forgotten the exchange rate. He selected the exchange tab and input the amount. Enter amount to exchange. 1,500 gold coins. He hesitated a moment, then confirmed. Calculating exchange rate. Gold to token ratio. Subject to fluctuation based on market value. 1 gold equals 100 tokens. Exchange confirmed. 1,500 gold, 150,000 tokens. New token balance. 161,000. Inigo blinked. Holy shit. He sat back against the headboard, staring at the shimmering number now displayed on his system HUD. He had never seen more than 5 digits in his token balance before. Now it was 6. 150,000 tokens. That was enough to buy an arsenal. Or tanks and tactical drones. Hell, maybe even something ridiculous like cruise missiles. He opened the weapons tab and browsed items that was available for purchase based from his balance. Inigo's finger hovered over the glowing screen of his system interface as he scrolled through the weapons and tactical equipment tab. Rows upon rows of high-tech tools and vehicles blinked to life with crisp rotating 3D models. His eyes narrowed as he skimmed past dozens of options. M1A2 Abrams main battle tank, 45,000 tokens. 60 Black Hawk helicopter, 30,000 tokens. M2 Bradley IFV, 20,000 tokens. Each one was a marvel of modern warfare. Fully functional real-world armaments with armor plating, engine specs and ammunition packages listed like product descriptions in a catalog. Inigo sat up straighter, tapping on the Black Hawk helicopter, watching it spin in a real-time hologram. Comes with automated avionics, 4-door capacity, reinforced plating. He murmured, eyes scanning the features. Combat ready. Fast insertion. Built-in flares. It was tempting. Tempting as hell. But there was one problem. He didn't know how to fly a helicopter. He tapped on the Bradley IFV next, reading its specs. Troop carrier 25mm cannon tow missile pod. Again, incredible potential. But also again he wasn't sure he could operate it. Maybe the system gave him some of the necessary training. Maybe it didn't. He didn't want to find out by crashing the damn thing or failing to move it out of a field in the middle of battle. Inigo leaned back, rubbing his jaw. Too risky, he muttered. I don't want to waste my balance on a piece of hardware that might not work by a single man. I know that military hardware requires a team to operate. He tapped back to the support weapon systems section and filtered the options. Remote operated / autonomous. That was more like it. Smaller icons loaded in. Less flashy than the tanks and choppers, but a hell of a lot more practical. His eyes scanned each row with growing interest. M2 Browning .50 cal remote turret. 1,500 tokens. Recon drone. Type 04 Hawkeye. 3,500 tokens. Anti-personnel drone. CQC class. 5,200 tokens. He tapped on the M2 Browning remote turret first. The rotating preview showed a stabilized mount designed to be deployed in less than 30 seconds. It could be operated via a tablet interface from up to 500 meters away, came preloaded with thermal and motion sensors, and auto-tracked enemies if the signal was lost. He liked it. He really liked it. He scrolled further, then stopped. His eyes locked onto a new listing. Tracked combat drone, unit designation, WN7 Wheeler. Cost 15,000 tokens. Loadout, twin 5.56mm miniguns, 2,500 rounds. Micromissile pod 6 rockets. Forward camera plus infrared plus audio feed, all-terrain treads. Control. Manual or AI-assisted linked through Freedom OS interface. Features. Combat AI auto-retreat protocols self-destruct system deployable smoke. Inigo leaned forward slowly. The thing looked like a cross between a miniature tank and a robot dog from hell. It had a low-profile armored hull, treads that could climb uneven rock and shallow slopes, and weapons tucked beneath retractable armor plates. He could picture it patrolling ahead of him, opening fire while he stayed in cover. "You're perfect," he said quietly. He opened the full preview and watched a simulated combat video. The Wheeler rolled out from behind a dune, miniguns spinning, tearing through animated targets. It locked onto heat signatures, launched 2 micro-rockets that turned a bunker door into scrap, then vanished behind a smoke screen as it retreated. This was it. Not as expensive as the vehicles, not as flashy, but deadly, mobile, and more importantly, remote-controlled. No piloting needed. Just command, point, and fire. Purchase. WN7 Wheeler, 15,000 tokens. Confirm. He didn't even hesitate. Transaction complete. WN7 Wheeler, added to inventory. Remaining balance, 146,005 tokens. A sharp glow pulsed across his HUD as the system integrated the drone's control interface into his wrist menu. A new submenu appeared. Deployed combat support units. He tapped it open. A single line pulsed. WN7, status. Offline. Ready for deployment. Inigo grinned. He wondered what it would look like in real life. So he deployed it by simply tapping on its icon. Suddenly, a magic circle appeared from the WN7, rose from the magic circle like a war machine from another age. Low to the ground, angular armor plating catching the morning light, treads softly whirring as it booted to life. Its twin miniguns rotated once with a soft click-click, sensors flickering red and green as it completed a quick startup check. Then it tilted its chassis, slightly, toward Inigo. "Is it bowing?" he muttered, squinting. The drone let out a soft beep-beep, and then, to Inigo's stunned amusement, it scooted forward on its treads and nudged lightly against his boot. Like a cat. A very dangerous, gun-wielding cat. Forward," he said experimentally. The WN7 darted ahead a few feet. "Stop." It froze instantly. Back. It reversed. Spin. The drone whirled on the spot, treads skimming against the wooden floor in a full circle before halting and giving a cheerful beep once more. Inigo blinked, then started laughing. "You are going to be my familiar in this world." The drone tilted slightly again, its twin miniguns dipping like ears. "Yeah, we are going to have many adventures together." Then, there was a knock on the door. Inigo doesn't have to know the person who had knocked from the other side of the door, as he already knew who it was. "Inigo, you have a visitor." "Wait. It's not Lyra?" Inigo had expected the person to be Lyra, but it turns out he was wrong. Well, nothing to be sad about when the person you are expecting is already waiting in the reception hall. Inigo quickly put WN7 in his inventory and made his way towards the door. Upon exiting his room, the innkeeper greeted him with a pleasing smile. "Good morning, Inigo," she said cheerily and then teasingly. "Geez, you shouldn't have kept your partner waiting for too long." She looked like she was ready to throw a knife into the ceiling. Inigo raised an eyebrow. "She does that." "She looked like the type." The innkeeper winked, then gestured toward the stairwell. "She's in the reception hall. Said she didn't want to come up and startle you. Very polite, in a tense, quiet, I'll break your fingers if you lie to me sort of way." Inigo sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. "Yep. That's Lyra." He descended the steps quickly, his boots tapping against the polished wood floor until the hallway opened into the reception. And just as expected, there she was. Lyra stood by the window, arms crossed, her silver hair catching the morning light. She wore a fresh set of leathers, a muted gray cloak draped loosely over her shoulders, and that usual calm yet sharp look on her face, the kind that made people step aside without needing to speak. She turned at the sound of his approach. "Took you long enough." "I had to get dressed," Inigo replied flatly. "Didn't expect a surprise visit." "I did say we'd look for a job today. Or did you forget already?" No, he waved his hand. She eyed him for a second, clearly suspicious but not pushing it. "Well, now that you're here and breathing, shall we?" "Lead the way," he said, gesturing with a slight grin. And just like that, they stepped out into the sunlit streets of Elandra once more. "Anyways, did you have breakfast?" Inigo asked, casting a side glance on her, looking at her cute pointy ears that he was curious to touch. "I already did. How about you?" "I don't, but I will buy one in the Adventurers Guild. Anyways, about your share of gold." "Actually," Lyra interrupted her, "I don't think I deserve the half of it." Inigo stopped in his tracks while Lyra kept going forward. But she soon noticed he stopped, so she stopped and turned. "Why don't you want half of it?" Inigo asked curiously. "Because you were the one who killed it. And I don't think it's right that I would get a share for something I didn't deal the final blow to," Lyra said, eyes meeting his evenly. Inigo blinked. Of all the things he expected her to say, that wasn't one of them. "You do realize that without you I wouldn't have survived the first 5 minutes of that fight, right?" he said, folding his arms. "You kept the wyverns off me while I lined up my shots. You covered the flanks, tracked their patterns, and held your ground without flinching. That wasn't charity. That was teamwork." Lyra looked away briefly as if thinking. "Still, that shot, that launcher, it was you. And yet I wouldn't trade you for any launcher," he said with a grin. "Besides, this isn't about matching kills. This is a partnership. You and me. We take risks, we split the rewards. That's the deal." "You're really not going to let this go, are you?" she muttered, a small, reluctant smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "Nope," Inigo said smugly. "Now take your damn share and maybe buy yourself something nice. Or something lethal, either works." "Okay, still I can't just accept it. Is there anything that you want me to do to repay you?" "Like I said, it's partner." Inigo paused as he thought of something. "Actually, I do have one, and it's a simple and weird request." "Anything. I will do anything," Lyra said eagerly, her pointy ears twitching. Did she just say that she will do anything? This girl is too innocent and vulnerable. "I just want to touch your ears if that's okay," Inigo said simply. Lyra blinked. Once. Twice. Her face froze for a split second, expression unreadable, before a faint crimson hue began to spread from the base of her neck all the way up to the tips of her pointed ears. "You want to what?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. Inigo rubbed the back of his neck, realizing how that must have sounded. "Just once. I've always been curious about elf ears. You know, the shape, the texture. Culturally, I mean." Lyra's eyes narrowed in a way that looked like she was about to throw a dagger at him, but then her gaze dropped to the side, avoiding his entirely. "That's stupid," she muttered, her voice low. "So is turning down a fair share of gold," he countered with a teasing grin. She let out a small huff, crossing her arms again as she looked off toward the morning bustle of the city. For a few moments she said nothing. Then, without looking at him, she mumbled, "Fine. But just for a second." Inigo blinked. "Wait, really? Don't make me repeat it," she growled softly, cheeks now fully flushed. "And don't make it weird." He stepped closer, lifting a hand gently. Her ears twitched as his fingers brushed the edge, soft and warm like silk-covered cartilage. Lyra winced slightly at first, as if the sensation was strange or ticklish. "Maybe both." "Well?" she asked quietly, still refusing to look him in the eye. "They're nice," Inigo said sincerely. "Softer than I expected." "You're such an idiot," she whispered, pulling away, face as red as a summer apple. "Hey, you offered. I didn't think you'd actually say something that stupid." "Inigo, you are stupid. Next time don't say anything." She glared up at him, clearly flustered, but there was no real heat in it. Just the quiet, embarrassed dignity of someone who had just let herself be vulnerable, even for a moment. "Let's just get to the guild," she grumbled, tugging her cloak tighter around her shoulders. "And if you ever bring this up again, I will poison your breakfast." Inigo chuckled. Noted. And then he watched her walk towards the guild, and seeing her embarrassed and throwing insults at him, made his heart skip a beat. Damn, this girl is cute. Inigo simply followed Lyra, who still had her cheeks puffing up from earlier, and minutes later, they arrived at the Adventurers Guild. As expected, it was full of people. The atmosphere was lively, and there were cliques here and there who were discussing their affairs. Meanwhile, Lyra was heading towards the weapons shop, a place that Inigo didn't explore much since his arrival. He followed her and then watched as she grabbed arrows from a neatly stacked display, examining the fletching with practiced fingers. The bowyer behind the counter, an older man with thick arms and a patch over one eye, nodded in silent approval as she tested the spine of each shaft. "These aren't bad," Lyra murmured, running her thumb along the shaft of a black feathered arrow. "Enchanted tips, cold-etched runes for piercing minor barriers. Good against magically reinforced hides." Inigo stepped up quietly behind her, hands in his pockets, watching as she continued sorting through the bundle of arrows. Her focus was sharp, almost like a ritual. The way she moved, precise, no wasted motion, reminded him again just how many years of experience Lyra likely had under her belt. He leaned in a little. "You always this serious when shopping?" he asked casually, his breath brushing near her ear. Lyra flinched just a little and straightened. "You trying to make me misjudge the balance?" she said, giving him a sideways glance. Inigo chuckled. "You're hard to distract. Thought I'd give it a shot." She turned slightly, holding up one of the arrows. "This is how I not end up getting impaled in a dungeon." "Duly noted," Inigo replied, smirking. She gave him a light jab in the ribs with the blunt end of a shaft. "Behave." "No promises," he said, leaning back just enough to avoid the next jab. As the bowyer returned to wrap up her purchase, Lyra turned away to pay, shaking her head, though he could see the faintest hint of a smile tugging at her lips. He was definitely getting to her. It was really fun teasing her. "You will have your break." As Lyra was about to complete her sentence, a person barged inside the Adventurers Guild hall. "Emergency. A rift. A rift has appeared." Inigo grabbed Lyra by the arm and pulled her closer to him. Lyra was caught off guard from it, but didn't mind it, as she knew it was just his protective instincts to protect her. "A rift," Inigo repeated. He remembered that term before from Elise. According to her, a rift is a spatial distortion, an unstable tear in the boundary between this world and whatever lies beyond. Monsters, corrupted beasts, and even stranger things had been known to pour out from them. They weren't common, but when they appeared, it was bad news for everyone nearby. The hall shifted instantly. Conversations halted. Chairs scraped. Adventurers who were lounging just a moment ago were now standing, hands moving toward weapons and belts. The atmosphere changed from relaxed to tense in a single breath. Inigo let go of Lyra's arm slowly, scanning the room as the guild receptionist scrambled to calm the shouting man who had brought the news. "Where?" someone asked. "West Ridge. Just past the old quarry," the man panted, sweat dripping from his brow. The Adventurers Guild staffs immediately get to work. One of them, Elise, was already heading upstairs to meet with the guild master. Meanwhile, Inigo observed what the adventurers would do in this situation. "Have there been any monsters who came out from it?" "There was none," the old man replied. "Then there's time. But the rifts have the most fearsome monsters. I don't want to risk going inside of it." "You are right, this is above our rank. I don't think we can handle that kind of threat. Unless there are high-ranking adventurers or the government itself sends their elite troops in the rift. There's no high-ranking adventurers present in this hall. What do we do then? Someone has to go before monsters start coming out from the rift." While listening to their conversation, Inigo turned to Lyra. "Have you experienced fighting in a rift before?" he asked. Lyra shook her head. "I haven't." Inigo frowned as he saw her face in a fearful expression. It seems that the rift had made a huge impression on the denizens of this world. Elise exited the guildmaster's office and walked up to the old man who announced that there was a rift. He was pulled into the office and spent 5 minutes there. After that, Elise came out again along with the old man and announced, "The rift that this gentleman told us is not yet verified. With that, we would like to verify it. The guild master is offering 1 gold coin to scout the perimeter of the rift. Again, you won't have to go inside the rift, just confirm the presence of the rift." Every adventurer looked at one another, hoping that among them would volunteer for the job. There were no easy takers as they knew how dangerous Rift is and it's making everyone uneasy. However, Inigo stepped forward, his voice cutting cleanly through the murmuring crowd. I'll take it. The entire guild hall seemed to still for a heartbeat. Heads turned. Conversations froze. The receptionist blinked, stunned, as silence rippled across the room like a shockwave. Elise, who had just returned to the front desk, paused with a stack of papers in her hands. Her eyes snapped to the voice, recognition immediately blooming across her face. Then to everyone's surprise she smiled. Inigo, she said, tone light but steady. Of course it'd be you. He walked up casually, hands in his pockets with Lyra just behind him. 1 gold coin for a confirmation job? Can't say no to something so simple. Simple, if it wasn't a rift. Elise handed him the quest slip without hesitation. You know what you're doing, so I won't ask you to be careful. Just come back with the truth. I always do, he replied with a smirk. He turned to Lyra. You coming with me? Lyra hesitated, glancing around the room, at the unsure faces, the cautious eyes, the tension. Then she met his gaze and gave a slow, reluctant nod. I'll go. The murmurs returned, louder this time, with disbelief and awe mixing in equal measure. 2 adventurers heading toward a rift, when the rest wouldn't even move an inch. Elise watched them go, quietly satisfied. She knew what Inigo could do, and more importantly, she knew he hadn't even shown his full hand yet. The sky above Alandra was clear, the sun casting long, golden rays over the cobbled streets as Inigo and Lyra exited the Adventurers Guild. But despite the pleasant morning, an invisible weight had settled over them, trailing them like a shadow with every step toward the western ridge. Neither of them spoke at first. The city slowly gave way to outskirts, and soon houses became sparse, replaced by gentle hills, tall grass, and the wind-carved stones that marked the edge of Alandra's reach. The path to the old quarry was barely a road, just a dirt trail winding between shrubs and broken fences. Every now and then they would pass a few traveling merchants, carts parked at the side, resting animals watching silently. The further they went, the less human the world felt. You sure about this? Lyra asked, finally breaking the silence. Inigo glanced at her. She walked beside him, her hand resting near the hilt of her short blade. Her steps were light but not casual, she was on edge. We're not going in, he said. Just confirming the rift's presence. Lyra exhaled, her breath tight. Still, it's not like anything else I've done before. Same here, Inigo admitted. Another pause stretched between them. But we'll manage, he added. It wasn't false confidence. He didn't have much information to work with, only what Elise had told him before. But something in him, whether stubbornness or instinct, said this was worth checking out. By the time they reached the quarry ridge, the landscape had shifted entirely. The open plains gave way to jagged cliffs and steep drops. Moss-covered stones jutted from the earth like old teeth, and silence had claimed the area. Not the soft kind of silence, but the kind that felt like the world itself was holding its breath. And then, they saw it. Just ahead, nestled in the sunken depression of the quarry, a swirling vortex hovered above the ground, spinning slowly like a scar in the air itself. Red and black energy coiled around it like tendrils of smoke, twisting and folding in on themselves, forming a rough circular gate. The center of the rift shimmered with a pulsating hue, like molten embers behind frosted glass. It hovered silently, unmoving, yet the air around it hummed, like a distant roar buried beneath layers of wind. Inigo stopped in his tracks. A sudden chill danced down his spine. Not from cold but from instinct. The kind of chill a predator might feel before another predator enters the field. His throat felt dry. That's... Lyra's voice came out quieter than usual. She stood just behind him, her silver hair catching the breeze. Her fingers gripped her cloak tightly at her collarbone, and her pupils were locked on the spiraling anomaly. Yeah, Inigo muttered. That's a rift. They stood there for another moment as if daring it to move or spit something out. But nothing came. Still it radiated dread. Like something ancient and wrong had punctured through the air and just stared back at them. Watching. Let's not get closer, Lyra said, backing up a step. Agreed. Inigo pulled out the quest slip from his coat pocket and flipped it over, scribbling the time and location with a bit of charcoal he kept on him. He didn't need to be told twice. This thing didn't belong here. Lyra stayed behind him as they turned back toward the trail. The feeling didn't fade, not even with distance. The moment the rift had appeared in his line of sight, it was like it etched itself into the back of his brain. They didn't speak until the trees returned. The Adventurers Guild Hall was quieter when they returned, but only barely. News traveled fast. As they stepped through the doors, heads turned. Ice followed them. Whispers started. They really went. Did they see it? Are they crazy? Elise stood behind the counter waiting. She set her pen down and gave them a nod. Well? She asked simply. Inigo approached, pulling the quest slip from his coat and setting it gently on the desk. It's real. Rifts just beyond the quarry, exact locations marked. Still stable. Nothing's come through yet. Elise picked up the slip, read it, then let out a short breath. Damn. So the old man wasn't drunk. Nope, Inigo said. Lyra stepped forward, still holding her cloak closed. It didn't move. But it felt like something on the other side was waiting. Elise gave her a knowing look. That's how they always feel. Like you're being sized up. You did good, for your first time seeing one. She opened a drawer and pulled out a small leather pouch. 1 gold coin. As promised. Inigo accepted it without ceremony, but Elise didn't miss the tension in his posture. I'll file the report immediately, she said. We'll get a dispatch ready. Probably knights or ranked adventurers from the capital. No one should be near it until it's sealed. Inigo gave a curt nod. Also, Elise added, leaning slightly closer so others wouldn't hear, thanks. We've had false alarms before. But if no one had gone to check this one, it would have gotten worse, Inigo said. Exactly. He turned to Lyra, who had quietly taken a seat on a bench near the wall, her eyes distant. Inigo sat beside her. You okay? Lyra blinked once, then looked at him. Yeah. Just rattled. I get it, he said. I didn't expect it to feel like that either. I thought it'd be like a portal, you know? Something you just look at and shrug off. It wasn't, Lyra whispered. It felt alive. They both sat in silence for a while, the low buzz of the guild around them returning to normal. I'll still split the reward with you, Inigo said, nudging the pouch of gold her way. Lyra shook her head. Keep it. I came because I didn't want you to go alone. I didn't do anything. That counts, he said simply. In this line of work, standing next to someone when it counts? That's everything. Lyra gave a small smile. You're a strange one, Inigo. Thanks. I try. He leaned back against the wall, letting out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The rift was real. It was open. And the next move wasn't his to make. Elise mentioned that you would need a certificate to accept a rift-related quest. Elise it is. Morning came quickly, too quickly for Inigo, who had barely slept. The image of the rift was burned into his mind, replaying again and again like a scene refusing to fade. The spiraling red gate. The silence. The hum. The feel. It had changed something in him. So by the time the first light of dawn warmed the stone streets of Elandra, he was already up, dressed, and heading toward the plaza fountain outside the Adventurers Guild. That's where he found Lyra, arms crossed, cloak wrapped around her shoulders. She looked up as he approached. You're early, she said. So are you. Didn't sleep much. Neither did I. They entered the guild together. The place was quieter than usual, more tense. Word of the rift had spread overnight. More adventurers were gathered than usual, most of them eyeing the mission board or muttering about rift-class threats. Elise was already at her post behind the counter. She spotted them and gave a small wave. Morning, you two. Inigo walked up. We want to apply for rift certification. The words landed like a dropped weapon. Elise blinked, as did Lyra. Wait, what? Lyra said, turning to him. Inigo kept his gaze on Elise. Rift certification. You said it when we're having a dinner date. We'd need it to accept any future missions related to that anomaly. Inigo. Lyra's voice dropped, uncertain. You're serious? He turned toward her and nodded. You don't have to come if it's too much. I get it. Lyra's expression hardened. I'm not afraid. Then let's go, he said. Elise stood frozen for a moment, then nodded. All right. You're lucky. The guildmaster is in. She led them past the front desk and down the side hall, toward a reinforced door with 2 guards. One knocked, then opened it without waiting. The guildmaster's office was as stately as Inigo remembered it, lined with weapons, scrolls, and glowing crystal tools of all shapes and sizes. Behind a heavy oak desk sat the man himself, broad-shouldered, silver-haired, and watching them with eyes like a hawk's. Elise stood to attention. Guildmaster, these two wish to apply for Rift certification. His brow lifted. These are the scouts from yesterday? Yes, sir. Guildmaster Thorn leaned back in his seat. Certification isn't given lightly. You understand that, yes? I do, Inigo said. Lyra nodded hesitantly. Do you also understand what being Rift certified means? He continued. You'll be eligible for high-danger assignments. Missions with mortality rates of over 50%. This isn't like hunting bandits or goblins. This is stepping into the unknown. I'm aware, Inigo said firmly. There was a pause. The guildmaster turned to Elise. What's their record? They've cleared all their assignments. 2 high-difficulty ones. This Rift scouting was their 3rd. He grunted. 3 C ranks. Normally not enough. But you scouted a Rift and returned to tell the tale. He studied them for a long moment before speaking again. Very well. You're both approved for provisional Rift certification. You'll be entered into the guild's registry as of tomorrow. The kingdom's tactical division will assess the threat level of the Rift by then. Once that's done, you can make your choice. He stamped a document and handed it to Elise. Prepare their provisional tags. Yes, Guildmaster. The meeting was over. As they exited the office, Lyra glanced sideways at Inigo. You didn't even tell me you were planning this. I wasn't sure, he admitted. Until last night. You could have asked first. I was going to do it either way. He scowled, then sighed. You're lucky I hate backing down. I was counting on that. The next day came with a brisk wind and skies darkening over the horizon. It looked like rain was coming. Inside the guild hall, tension hung heavier than before. New notices had been posted. Knights in blue and silver armor stood near the walls, waiting for orders. A freshly installed board bore a new heading: Rift Missions, Authorization Required. Elise met them near the counter holding a sealed envelope. The kingdom's assessment is complete. The Rift has been classified as a B rank, she said. Lyra crossed her arms. That's better than I thought. Still dangerous, Elise said. Most B rank rifts aren't just dangerous because of the monsters. They're unpredictable. Environment changes, time distortions, corruption fields. One wrong step and you're dead. Inigo nodded. Still, that's within our limits, right? Elise handed them each a metal tag, silver, engraved with a spiral rift and a sword etched through the center. The Rift certification. You're officially registered. You can now take on Rift-class missions effective immediately. She gave them both a pointed look. That doesn't mean you should rush in unprepared. We won't, Inigo said. Lyra tucked her tag into her belt pouch, the metal cool against her fingertips. So, what now? Now. Elise leaned forward. Now you go get ready. Because the Rift won't wait forever. And neither will whatever's watching on the other side. Inigo and Lyra stepped out of the guild together, the wind tugging at their cloaks as the first drops of rain began to fall. The cobblestone streets glistened beneath their boots, and the scent of wet stone filled the air. Neither of them spoke for a moment, walking in silence through the soft drizzle. Then Lyra sighed. So we're really doing this? We are, Inigo said quietly. But not today. She glanced sideways at him. We prepare first, he continued. Gear, supplies, maybe ask around if anyone's been near a rift before. I don't want to go in blind. Lyra gave a short nod. Good. Because I'm not planning to die in some swirling red hole. A small smile tugged at the edge of Inigo's lips. That's the spirit. They reached the edge of the plaza, the fountain they had stood by just the day before still bubbling despite the gray skies. Inigo stopped there, watching the ripples spread across the water's surface. You felt it too, right? He asked. Like something was watching us? Lyra hesitated, then nodded. It wasn't just fear. It was like it knew we were there. I've been thinking about that all night. You sure we're ready? Inigo looked up at the overcast sky. No. But I think we're the best shot this city's got. Lyra didn't reply. But she didn't walk away either. The rain had passed by midday, leaving the city of Elandra wrapped in a blanket of damp fog and the scent of clean stone. Thin wisps of mist curled along the streets, clinging to rooftops and tree branches. Most adventurers had returned indoors, either preparing for upcoming missions or huddled around hearths trading stories of monsters and riches. Inigo and Lyra were not among them. They stood outside the Imperial Mage Department. Lyra stared up at the building with a half-furrowed brow. "I still don't get it," she muttered. "Why here?" Inigo adjusted the strap of his weapons case over his shoulder. "Because I have magic." That made her blink. "Wait, what?" He nodded once. "I had it checked a couple of days ago. I went through a mana assessment. Turns out I've got enhancement-type magic." "You're joking." "Nope." Lyra turned fully to face him, arms crossed. "Since when?" "I've always had it, apparently. Just never knew." She stared at him like he'd grown another head. "You have magic. Anything else you forgot to mention?" Inigo managed a small grin. "I make a mean fried rice." Lyra rolled her eyes and muttered something under her breath, but the corner of her mouth twitched. "So, enhancement type. What does that mean exactly?" "No fireballs or lightning bolts," he said. "I can't blow things up with a gesture. But I can reinforce myself. Boost reflexes. Even temporarily enchant weapons." Her gaze dropped to the weapons case at his side. "So, you're planning to practice enchanting?" "Here." "Yeah. The Mage Department offers supervised training if you're officially registered, and I am. Figured I'd test things out. Maybe see if I can coat a bullet in mana, or give my knife some anti-spirit bite. You know, the usual thing." Lyra tilted her head. "Huh. What?" "I just always thought your strength came from your weapons. I mean, those things are terrifying on their own." "They are," he agreed. "But what if I fight something immune to physical damage? I need a backup plan." That drew a nod from her. "Fair point." Inigo's eyes lingered on her bow. "What about you? Do you have magic?" She hesitated, then nodded once. "I do. Nothing flashy. Just a bit of wind magic. I use it to steady my aim, slow my breathing when I shoot. But I haven't trained it much. There's usually no need." "Ever considered getting it checked again?" "Not really." "You should," he said. "You never know when we'll need more than arrows." Lyra looked at him thoughtfully, then back at the tall white building. "All right. If you're going in, I'll tag along." They approached the gate. The guards recognized Inigo's ID and stepped aside without issue. Inside, the air was cooler than outside, scented with parchment and something faintly herbal. The atrium hadn't changed. Same glowing runes, same dome ceiling, same pulsing magical veins carved into stone. It was a far cry from the chaos and steel of the Adventurers Guild. A mage in training, this time a younger woman in a green-trimmed robe, greeted them near the front desk. "Inigo, correct?" "Yes. I'm here for enhancement training. I was told I could get supervised practice sessions." The mage nodded and checked the registry, then passed him a marked pass card. "Room 12. 3rd floor. You'll find an instructor there waiting." Inigo turned to Lyra. "You sure you want to sit through this?" "I'll watch," she said. "Not every day I see a guy enchant a weapon." They climbed the spiral stairs to the 3rd floor. The upper halls were quieter, lined with floating lanterns and walls hung with spell diagrams. Chamber 12 was a large room with reinforced stone walls, a summoning circle etched into one side and a weapon rack on the other. A robed instructor, tall and narrow-eyed, glanced up from a desk of runes and alchemical notes. Enhancement category. That's me," Inigo said, showing his scroll. "Very well. Let's begin." The instructor gestured toward a practice pedestal at the center. "You brought your own weapons?" "I did." Inigo opened his case and removed a compact handgun and a combat knife. The instructor arched a brow. Unusual tools for mana infusion. But not impossible. Inigo ignored the judgment. He approached the pedestal and placed the knife atop it. "How do I start?" "Place your hand on the weapon. Channel your mana into it, not by force but by intent. Think of what you want it to do. Imagine the weapon cutting deeper or striking truer. Let that desire guide the flow." Inigo inhaled slowly, focusing. His palm pressed against the flat of the blade. At first he felt nothing. But then, A faint vibration like a current pulling through his arm. He focused harder. Envisioned the knife slicing through armor. The metal beneath his palm began to hum, soft but distinct. A faint glow traced along its edge, white and bluish, like moonlight on a frozen lake. Lyra stepped forward slightly. "It's working." The instructor nodded. "Crude but effective. Keep it up. Don't lose focus." Inigo gritted his teeth. Sweat pricked at his brow, but he maintained the flow. After several long seconds, the glow pulsed, and then faded. He stepped back, exhaling. The instructor stepped forward and inspected the blade. Mana residue still lingers. This will last maybe a minute, 2 at most in combat. Not bad for a first try. Now try the other one. Is it okay if I try the knife first, see what effects linger when I reapply it? Inigo asked. The instructor gave a brief nod. Good instinct. I have some targets prepared, the instructor said, gesturing to a series of conjured practice dummies along the far wall. Mana-sensitive constructs. They'll react if your weapon is properly enchanted. Inigo nodded and stepped toward the closest one. He gripped the combat knife again, channeling mana into it with more intent than before. Sharper, focused. This time he imagined the edge not just slicing through armor, but through layered magical resistance. The glow returned faster, steadier. Without hesitation he moved. A quick slash through the dummy's shoulder released a burst of blue sparks. He glanced back at the instructor. A clean cut, the man said, arms folded. Mana is flowing through the edge rather than lingering. Good. You're learning to embed the energy instead of coding it. Inigo sheathed the knife and picked up the handgun next. Let's try something more practical. He held the weapon steady with both hands, not to fire it but to channel mana the way he'd practiced earlier. Inigo closed his eyes and focused. He imagined the mana not just flowing into the barrel but compressing, condensing, layer by layer, like packing an explosive charge behind the bullet. He pictured the moment of impact, the shot hitting its target and erupting in a concussive blast, like a high-explosive round tearing through flesh and armor alike. The frame of the gun began to hum. A low, vibrating growl resonated through his bones. Pale blue sigils glowed along the slide as if the weapon itself were responding to his intent. Mana gathered thickly at the muzzle, forming a shimmer of barely contained pressure. I'm trying to simulate an he round, Inigo said. One shot. One small explosion. He aimed toward the reinforced panel and squeezed the trigger. A thunderclap of mana roared across the... Then, suddenly Inigo felt tired. You are exhausted, that's normal, especially for the first-timers. You have to increase your mana capacity if you want to sustain effects like that in real combat, the instructor said, stepping forward with hands clasped behind his back. His voice was calm, but there was a glint of intrigue in his eyes now. You didn't just infuse the projectile, you altered the kinetic discharge with pure intent. That wasn't a mere enhancement. That was transmutation on the verge of evocation. Smoke still curled from the impact site on the reinforced panel. A shallow crater, scorched at the edges, marked where the bullet had struck, its normal penetration amplified by a burst of mana detonation on contact. So, how do I increase my mana capacity? The instructor gave a thoughtful nod, pacing slowly across the room as if considering how best to answer. There are several approaches, he began, gesturing for Inigo to sit on the bench near the wall. You've got decent instincts. That'll take you far. But raw talent isn't enough if your body can't sustain the flow. Inigo wiped his forehead with his sleeve, breathing slower now. I figured as much. First, the instructor said, raising a finger, there's the natural route. Meditation, mana-breathing exercises, deep concentration over long periods. It takes discipline, but if done consistently, your mana pool will gradually expand. Think of it like a muscle. Strain it, rest it, grow it. And once it's resting, your mana is slowly filling up. Second option, accessories. Mana crystals, amplifiers, or enchanted charms. Some store mana, others act as conduits to stabilize flow and reduce strain. They won't grow your core, but they'll let you do more with what you already have. I see, so meditation, huh? That'll do, Inigo said. Thank you for the lessons, instructor. The instructor offered a faint smile, the first sign of warmth he'd shown since they arrived. Instructor Relas, he said. I'm here most afternoons. Come back when you've rested. We can work on weapon imprinting next time, embedding enchantments that trigger only on impact. Inigo stood and gave a polite bow. Thank you, Instructor Relis. I learned a lot today. Relis gave a short nod, already turning back to his desk full of alchemical runes. And remember, rest. Burnout isn't just mental. It erodes the core if you push too hard too fast. With that, Inigo and Lyra quietly exited the training room, the soft hiss of magic seals reactivating behind them. As they stepped out into the hallway, Lyra elbowed him lightly in the side. Not bad. Even without affinity, you could still inflict some serious damage with your arsenal alone. I'd like to think I did it with style, Inigo replied with a tired grin. Still, that took a lot out of me. You looked like you were about to pass out. I was close, he admitted, rubbing the back of his neck. But it gave me an idea. Relis mentioned magic accessories, crystals, charms and such. I want to check some out. Lyra raised an eyebrow. You're actually going shopping for magical gear? Think of it as investment, he said. Besides, I'm curious what's out there. They left the Imperial Mage Department and returned to the city streets. The fog had lightened, revealing more of Elandra's polished stone roads and busy intersections. Street lamps powered by glowing mana crystals flickered softly to life as dusk approached. Their path took them to one of the nearby merchant districts just outside the university quarter, where smaller magic shops nestled between potion stalls and old bookstores. They passed a vendor selling enchanted scarves and another advertising mood-based hair dyes before stopping at a shop called Glyph and Garnet. The interior was cozy but well-lit, with shelves lined in velvet and a faint scent of incense in the air. Glass cases displayed accessories of all kinds: rings, necklaces, bracelets, even a few enchanted belt buckles. A soft magical hum filled the space, subtle but ever-present. Welcome to Glyph and Garnet, said a friendly shopkeeper, a bespectacled elf in a long cobalt tunic. First time in? Yes, Inigo said. I'm looking for accessories that help with mana storage or enhancement casting. Enhancement type? The shopkeeper beamed. Of course we have all of those, you can have a look at our display. He opened a glass case and produced a pair of thin silver rings, plain-looking, but etched with small arcane symbols around the band. These store your mana while at rest and slowly release it when you cast. Not enough to power a full spell on their own, but great for easing strain. Especially if you're new to channeling. Inigo picked one up and turned it over between his fingers. He could feel the subtle vibration of stored mana, like a gently pulsing heartbeat. I'll take this one, he said. Then after a pause he looked at Lyra. He caught the glance. What? He picked up a second ring and held it out to her. For you, he said casually. Lyra blinked. Huh. You've got wind magic, right? Think of it as a backup. Store a little energy in it so you can steady your aim even when you're tired. Practical. Her eyes flicked from the ring to him then back. A faint color crept into her cheeks. You're giving me a ring? Inigo tilted his head. Yeah. Is that weird? I mean, kind of, she mumbled, visibly flustered. It's a ring. It's not that kind of ring, he said with a smirk. But hey, if it embarrasses you, I can just. No, she said a bit too fast. Then quickly softened her tone. I mean, I'll take it. Thanks. She accepted the ring and turned away, pretending to examine the display shelves. Inigo swore he saw her ears turn pink. They paid for the rings, 10 silver each, enchanted and ward-sealed for safe mana containment, and stepped back outside as the sky dimmed into a quiet twilight. You know, I'm seriously considering buying a house at this point. Paying a day in the inn was convenient, but nothing would beat the feeling of you having a home. Inigo spoke and continued. Maybe after the Rift mission. You think it's going to land us a copious amount of money. Well, it is a rift, so yeah, it has high reward. But don't get too cocky, I see a lot of people dying inside and never returning, Lyra said seriously. I am sure we will get partied with some strong individuals in this kingdom, we'll be okay. I can't wait to see them. A day later at the Adventurers Guild, Inigo and Lyra entered, and instead of the usual bustle of armor-clad warriors, shouting clerks and clashing tankards, they were met with stillness. Chairs sat empty. The quest board was bare. Not even Elise was behind the counter. Inigo narrowed his eyes. It's empty. Lyra scanned the quiet hall. This is unusual. It is indeed unusual, came a booming voice from across the room. Both turned toward the source. From a hallway behind the main desk emerged Guildmaster Thorn, his deep crimson cloak dragging behind him like a battle standard. Despite the early hour, the man looked fully awake, broad-shouldered, weathered, and already nursing a ceramic mug that smelled of black coffee and something faintly spiced. For the meantime, Thorn continued, his heavy boots echoing across the stone floor, the Adventurers Guild will not be accepting requests from the public. Inigo stepped forward, frowning. Why? What's going on? Thorn approached them with the weight of a man who carried both authority and bad news. Because of the rift incident 2 days ago, he said grimly. This branch is now designated as a staging point. Lyra tensed. Staging point? For what? For those who will enter the rift, Thorn answered, setting his mug down on a side table. Including both of you. The words hit with finality. I see. Inigo looked to Lyra. She didn't say anything, but her shoulders were stiff. When is the briefing? He asked. They're on their way, Thorn said. Small strike teams only. 7 people total in your group. You two are the first to arrive. Who else? Lyra asked. You'll meet them shortly, Thorn replied. Then his tone lightened. But first, breakfast. He gestured toward the long wooden table near the side wall. Instead of the usual guild mess, it had been set with fresh bread, spiced sausages, steamed eggs, and pitchers of herbal tea and water. A tray of sliced fruit sat near the end. Compliments of the house, Thorn said. You'll need the energy. Thank you, Inigo said, pulling out a chair. This actually smells amazing. Lyra slid into the seat beside him and poured herself a cup of tea. Not what I expected when walking into a staging point. Inigo took a bite of spiced sausage, then ripped a piece of bread and dipped it into his eggs. Better than trail rations, that's for sure. Lyra smiled faintly as she reached for a slice of fruit. Yeah. Might as well enjoy it before things go crazy. For a few quiet minutes they ate in peace. The food was warm, freshly cooked, and clearly not just standard guild fare. Someone had gone out of their way to prepare it. Then footsteps echoed from the entrance. The doors creaked open and a group of figures stepped inside. Hey, so we are the early birds, chirped a bubbly, energetic voice. Inigo and Lyra turned, and saw a girl about their age, blonde hair tied into a high twin-tail with spell clips that glowed faintly with mana. Her robes were navy and gold, and her wand sparkled with polished crystal tips. Her wide, starry eyes scanned the room with infectious curiosity. I'm Reyna Oral, she declared, striking a pose. Top of my class at the Imperial Magic Academy. You must be the rest of my team. Lyra blinked. She's loud. Louder than you were expecting, huh? Inigo muttered. Behind Reyna came a tall, graceful woman in white priest's robes, hood down, long chestnut hair cascading down her back. Her demeanor radiated calm and confidence, and her smile was gentle, almost motherly. Ignore Reyna, she said with a soft laugh. She gets excited around new people. I'm Sister Marianne, the healer of this party. You may call me Marianne. Reyna beamed. Don't worry, I'm great in combat. I just like, people. Next came a figure clad in gleaming silver armor, every piece polished and fitted perfectly. A blue cape swayed behind him, and the crest of the Royal Knights Academy gleamed on his chest plate. His sword was long, heavy, and carried with the grace of a true expert. Sir Cale Godwin, he said formally. Pleasure to meet you. Inigo gave him a once-over and muttered. He looked like you walked out of a painting. Trailing behind them were 2 figures dressed for far more shadowy work. One wore a dark half-mask and lightweight leather armor, daggers strapped to his thighs and a platinum guild emblem pinned near the collar. His presence was quiet, calculating. Thorn gestured toward him. That's Shade. Platinum-ranked assassin. Doesn't talk much, but you'll want him on your side. The last figure was even larger than Cale. Thick black armor covered him from neck to boot, battered with scratches from countless fights. A massive tower shield rested on his back. His eyes, calm, calculating, peeked out from beneath a spiked helmet. *** Darius. Platinum class. His voice was deep like stone grinding. Just hearing their introductions made Inigo and Lyra feel out of place. After all, they are high-ranking individuals and they were just silver-ranked adventurers. So these two. Reina hummed as she approached Inigo and Lyra. An elf and an ordinary human. I don't sense much potential from you, she said as she stared at Inigo in the eye. Oh my, you are a silver-ranked adventurer. That explains it. Am I being mocked? Inigo chuckled, trying to sound light-hearted, though there was a twitch at the corner of his eye. Reina gasped theatrically, covering her mouth with both hands. Oh no, was I too blunt? She said, eyes wide and shimmering with overdone innocence. But I'm just being honest, you know? Honesty is a virtue. Lyra raised an eyebrow, sipping her tea with a deadpan stare. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Me. Reina tilted her head, then leaned in toward Inigo with a sly grin. Maybe just a little. I have heard of your exploits, you both taking down kobold camps, a wyvern. It's impressive. I think you'll be able to keep up with us. Anyways, what do you do? What's your name? Inigo. Oh right, Inigo, what are your talents? I'm good at shutting down people, Inigo replied confidently. Reina tilted her head to the side, her finger on her lips. Shutting down? What does it mean? I shoot enemies, Inigo answered, the corner of his lip twitching from annoyance. Shoot enemies? What? I don't see any bows and arrows on you. Reina leaned closer, eyes flicking across Inigo. That's enough, Reina. You're intimidating the poor guy, Sister Marianne said gently, placing a calm hand on the girl's shoulder. But I'm not even being mean yet, Reina pouted, puffing her cheeks. I'm just curious. I like knowing what people do. Like this elf over here. She's clearly an archer as she has her bow and arrow on her. But Inigo. Yes, calm down now, Marianne shushed her. I can't believe that you really applied for this mission, said Shade, voice cold and low as he casually unsheathed a dagger. Then suddenly he vanished. Inigo blinked. A faint whisper of air brushed against his neck. A heartbeat later, cold steel kissed the side of his throat. Everyone froze. Even Reina's mouth hung open slightly, her playful smirk fading. You'll die easily, Shade said flatly, his voice now barely inches from Inigo's ear. His presence had materialized behind him like a shadow given form. No footsteps, no sound, no warning. Lyra's hand shot halfway to her bow. Kale stood but didn't draw. Only Marianne seemed calm, though even her smile faltered slightly. Inigo didn't move. Didn't flinch. Glad he smiled. Just a little. Not out of arrogance but awe. His pulse quickened, not from panic but from the sheer thrill of it. That speed. That silence. That precision. It was terrifying, yes. But it was also a glimpse. A glimpse of what he could become. Shade pulled the dagger back and stepped away without another word, his mask hiding whatever expression he might have had. Inigo exhaled slowly, raising a hand to rub his neck. Ha. Ha. Reina practically squeaked. He just teleported behind you and put a knife to your throat. You didn't even jump. That's because I wasn't scared, Inigo replied, staring at the spot Shade had stood just moments ago. I was impressed. Lyra gave him a side glance. You call that being impressed? You almost got your head separated. Inigo smirked. If he wanted to kill me, I'd be dead already. But he didn't. That means it was a lesson. A lesson? Marianne asked, folding her arms gently. Inigo nodded. Yeah. That I've still got a long way to go. Okay, settle down now, let's discuss the rift now. Okay, settle down now, Guildmaster Thorn said firmly, clapping his hands once. The sound echoed off the stone walls and snapped everyone's attention back to him. Let's discuss the rift. From a leather satchel slung across his shoulder, Thorn pulled out a thick scroll sealed with the crimson insignia of the Central Guild Authority. He unrolled it over the long wooden table near the breakfast spread, where several maps and sketches of magical readings were already laid out. At the center of the table was a drawn depiction of the rift's location. Before anything else, Thorn began, let me be clear. This mission is dangerous. If any of you came here expecting an ordinary subjugation quest, walk out now. No one moved. Even Reina, normally full of words, had gone still. The flicker of anticipation in her eyes dulled to something more serious. Thorn nodded approvingly and continued. This is what we know so far. 2 days ago, a rift appeared in West Ridge as confirmed by Inigo and Lyra. It's stable for now, but the longer we left it there, the more chance it could turn into a breach, unleashing a monster existing inside of it. Darius crossed his arms. So we close it. That's right. As you all know, rifts can be closed by exterminating the monsters inside of it. The numbers are unknown and the strengths are also unknown. If the enemy numbers inside are overwhelming or if there's something we haven't accounted for, you are to fall back immediately. Exit the rift and signal us. In that case, the guild will escalate the matter and deploy multiple strike teams in collaboration with the government. Sounds like a lot of ifs, Kale murmured. Thorn didn't deny it. That's why we selected you 7. You represent a wide range of strengths and specialties. If anyone can handle this, it's this team. He paused, letting the silence settle. But should you succeed, should you eliminate all threats and collapse the rift without outside aid, the guild and the Alandra Council have agreed to a reward. He looked at each of them, measuring their attention. Inigo raised a brow. And? Thorn grunted. 10,000 gold coins. Per person. The room reacted instantly. That's a lot of money in tokens for Inigo. Marianne, serene as always, merely smiled. The church will be grateful. Kale remained stoic, but his hand subtly tightened on the hilt of his sword. Only Shade and Darius were unmoved. Whether out of professionalism or disinterest was unclear. It's generous, Inigo said, resting a hand on the edge of the table. But I guess it needs to be, considering the risk. Make no mistake, Thorn said, rolling the scroll back up. The pay is good because the danger is real. Rift incursions are unpredictable. No mission plan survives first contact. He stepped back, then looked toward the massive doors at the end of the hall. Carriage and mounts are ready outside. Once you step through that rift, you're on your own. You're authorized to make decisions on the field without checking back with the guild. Kale gave a sharp nod. Understood. Thorn paused, then added more quietly, and one more thing. If any of you fall inside, we won't be able to retrieve your body. A chill passed through the group. Even Reyna, whose usual cheer had returned halfway through the reward announcement, swallowed hard. We won't fail, she said softly, gripping her staff. No, Kale agreed. We won't. Let's move out, Shade said quietly, already turning toward the door. The group followed in silence. Lyra slung her quiver over her shoulder, fingers lightly brushing the fletching of her arrows. Hey, she said to Inigo as they walked side by side. Think we'll make it back? We have to, Inigo said, adjusting the strap of his satchel. 10,000 gold coins and a glowing review from the guild? I'm not dying before I see that payday. Lyra chuckled under her breath. Typical. And we might get promoted, Inigo grinned. That is if you contribute to the fight, Lyra replied. I think they'll base it on individual performance. But seeing you in combat, I can confidently vouch that you can make an impression on our new party. Right. As they passed through the main hall and out onto the steps of the Adventurers Guild, morning sunlight greeted them. 2 armored carriages stood ready, one for personnel, one for supplies. Horses stamped impatiently, snorting steam into the crisp air. Thorn stood at the doorframe behind them, arms crossed. Strike Team Alpha, you are hereby authorized. May the gods watch over you. Kale was first to step into the carriage. Reyna climbed in next, nearly tripping on the step. Darius and Marianne followed, quiet and composed. Shade didn't enter. He simply vanished, reappearing a moment later already seated inside like he'd always been there. Lyra hopped in next. Inigo turned, glancing one last time at the guild hall. Its pillars, its banners, the familiar warm smell of food and parchment. And then he climbed aboard. The doors closed. The wheels turned. And the strike team rolled out of Alandra. Toward the unknown. Toward the rift. And whatever waited on the other side. Inside, Inigo broke the silence. You guys have experience with rifts? For a moment no one answered. The wooden wheels creaked beneath them as the carriage rolled through the outskirts of Alandra, the buildings thinning into forest. Morning light filtered through the slitted windows, illuminating dust in the air. Then Kale finally responded. Yes. Just that. Reyna, surprisingly, didn't chirp in with some bubbly comment. She nodded, her usual grin absent. 3rd-year assignment at the academy. We lost 3 students that day. Marianne folded her hands in her lap, eyes distant. I've entered 2 rifts on official clergy missions. One collapsed prematurely. We weren't able to retrieve everyone. Shade didn't speak, but the way his fingers tapped once on the hilt of his dagger spoke volumes. That and the fact he hadn't made a sound since boarding. Darius grunted. Twice. That was all he said. Inigo glanced around. No one offered details. No one described what they saw, what they fought, what they lost. Just numbers. Cold, hard numbers. How bad is it? He asked, quieter now. Honestly. Kale was the one to answer again. Fatality rates high. Some say over 60% for unranked or silver teams. 73, Marianne corrected gently. Based on church records. Higher in some cases, they are unpredictable at best, Darius added, eyes still fixed on the window. Inigo leaned back against the carriage wall, processing that. It wasn't fear that gripped him. It was clarity. Rifts weren't just dungeons. They weren't glorified monster nests. They were meat grinders, freak distortions of magic and space, where the rules of reality twisted and survival wasn't guaranteed by strength alone. Lyra, seated beside him, crossed her arms. Her voice was tight. So you've all been in before. But I'm guessing none of you trust us to survive this. That hit the air like a thrown blade. No one denied it. Reyna glanced at her sideways. It's not personal. Could have fooled me, Lyra muttered. Kale turned his gaze toward them at last. You're silver ranked. Neither of you have rift experience. It's not about trust. It's about probability. We've seen what happens when people underestimate what's inside. Lyra's jaw tightened. We're not reckless. Good, Shade said flatly. Then don't get in the way. Inigo put a hand lightly on Lyra's arm before she could snap back. He gave her a small shake of the head. Don't bother, he said quietly. Let them believe what they want. We'll show them in the field. I'll show them what freedom looks like. This confused the six of them.